Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mile High Sports Symposium. I am JT Matthews at JTMatthews01 on Twitter, and I'm here with the doctor, Nicholas Manning, at DR_N_Manning on Twitter. Doc, how you doing today? Happy Wednesday. Less technical difficulties so far, so let's see if that keeps up. How you doing?
Doing all right, man. I just got my dogs back. Apparently, our children can't man a door, and so they came back. Just mud though, so it's fine. Did get the carpets cleaned yesterday though, so
yeah, bad timing.
Not ideal. Not ideal, but we sprayed them off in the back. So far, so good. So, but all jokes aside, I'm good, man. It's full throw into the summer, even though today is a little on the weather, but overall doing well. How about you?
Yeah, doing well. Waiting. Just we tried to get our training camp tickets this morning, and man, we struck out. Everything sold out. I checked every single day. I wasn't going to be able to do every single day, but I wanted to see if I can get something. Yep. And I don't know what happened, but they are.
Well, so what had happened with the team is they are, right. So about 3,000 to 5,000 people were showing up to training camp every year. Right. Yeah. And then the fire department found out how many people were coming and reminded the Broncos that they only had permission for 3,000 people to show up based on their fire regulations and capacity. That said, they are redoing the practice facility to be able to incorporate some stands and things like that, which I think all that would be awesome. But with that, there's only 800 spots per day now. So, practices that usually were between 3,500 and 4,500 in total attendance now got whittled down to 800. It was hard enough to try and get tickets when there was 5,000 available, let alone 4,000, let alone 800. So shout out to whoever got them. Nice. Let me and JT know if you got room.
Just saying. Yeah, if you're not going to use them, we know a couple guys that would take it. Just saying.
Two thumbs.
Just well, let's talk about some Denver sports. Let's go. Lots to talk about in the last couple of days. Nuggets have made some official hires. Instead of hiring the GM, they have hired two VPs. One internally, Ben Tenzer, who's the executive VP of basketball operations now, and they have hired Jonathan Wallace, and he's the VP of player personnel. Looks like it's going to be a dual role kind of situation. Two guys for one job, essentially. Yep. I don't know how I feel about it. I want to talk it out because it feels it feels like the Cronkies are doing Cronky things. And when you could go get a high-profile GM, you decided to hire two unproven dudes in an era of Nikola Jokic where you have to win. And so I think people are skeptical. I think people are, I don't know if they're right to be skeptical, but they have a right to be skeptical based on a lack of track record. I think Tenzer has been here. He's been kind of deemed a cap guru, which is something that we need, obviously, because our expenditures, our cap is pretty much maxed out unless you go into the second apron. And it just seems like an odd hiring, odd to go with two guys to do one job as opposed to one guy to do one job. Yep. What's your takeaway generally from the announcement, from the hire, et cetera?
Yeah, so I do know that they had a couple candidates. I think the VP in Miami, and then I think one more. I don't mind it in essence, right? It's a little bit the way that the Broncos are set up. We'll use the example, right? So they have Hurtado, who is the cap guy. George Payton is the personnel guy, right? So George Payton, right, like draft capital, things like that, things that have more of a qualitative value, right? Like what's the player? How much would we dock it? What in the range? How would we stack them up with other players against the league? And then it goes to Rich, and Rich hammers out the details of it, right? Fits him in the slot.
Right.
Reading it, at least Tenzer, who's been with the team for 17 years, like he looks like he's 9. So I wonder what job he got first.
Probably a video guy or something.
Probably a video guy. Yeah, probably some content creator. He's the first Twitter guy. But a little bit like that, right? So his position is the team architecture. And I think probably this was a lot in response to maybe Calvin Booth's his offhand, right? So you have Jonathan Wallace, who is actually pretty well thought of, was an up and coming guy under Tim Connolly, was here early in his career, and has, at least as been stated by others, really good connections throughout the league. One thing that Calvin Booth didn't have.
Right.
And adding the expertise of a guy who understands the aprons, which I don't understand them. Like trade value with what you can sign and I think that they recognized we need more horsepower in this role. Because one, we have to do more with less in terms of like flexibility. They don't have a ton of draft capital. So I don't think they have a pick this year. That's true. Correct. And then, so I think they have one next year.
Yeah.
But then you have Deron Holmes coming back. You had Saric opt in, Russ opt out. They have mid-level exceptions and things like that. So there's like these opportunities for some middle moves, but you can't trip up and get this team thrown into the next apron, especially if you're not going to like do it for a $20 million player, right? If you're not going to do it for KCP to keep him here, don't do it for Luke Kennard or whatever, which I think would be a great mid-level exception. Anyway, that said, if you have 2 people for one job, it's like having 2 quarterbacks, right? Like, do you have them? I don't. I think the Cronkies are good ownership in general. This is the most unstable they've been in any of the 3 franchises, I think, at any point in time, really. Because even when Waugh walked out, Sakic was entrenched. They fired Jeff Fisher. They got McVay and Snead, and they've been rolling for 2 decades or whatever. And even now, I mean, really, Malone was here 10 years. Calvin was here for, I think 10 as in 2 roles or something like that. So the timing is terrible. You would have liked there to be a little bit more urgency. You see other teams making moves, right? The Celtics like tearing their team down as the final seconds went off in Game 7 of the finals, and so there's no rest for the Wicked except in Denver. I think that's the off-putting part, is like, what took this so long?
Right.
You weren't going after Bob Myers, so you didn't. If that would have been the hire, that would make sense. Like, it probably took a while to like hammer that out. The Cronkies have never been huge on spending a ton in their front office. So for as much as they, player personnel that they spend up to the cap or the first apron, I don't blame them for not wanting to throw away another $100 million every season for like a B-level player that probably won't get you a championship. Like, that wouldn't be the guy that gets the championship anyway. But they F them picks in LA because they sign guys and they sign guys. So their focus is much more, I think, on the field. I don't know what Josh is a basketball guy. Like, I think he's a college basketball player. That serves me right. Like, he loves basketball. He was basketball. That right. But he's going to be the thumb up or thumb down, like he's going to be Caesar in the Roman Coliseum. They bring the deal. Each of them's like, I don't know, like I like this guy, but I don't think the contract's great. And he's just going to tell him like the thumb up, thumb down on whether or not it's good. It can work. It's like they're banking a ton on culture with guys who are here when the culture sucked. And so, or when it got to its worst. All of these guys too are in their early 40s. And as someone in their early 40s, you know, would you have wanted maybe a couple more people who have been in the roles or senior advisor, maybe, right? Like go pluck out some former GM to consult on some of this stuff and the strategy.
Right.
But in the end, if this team makes a couple good moves and they win, it's genius. And then if they don't, obviously, it's a pretty easy thing to be able to point at and say that's why. I think the final part is, what does Nikola think? He has yet to sign his extension. Kroenke brought up the predicament that they would be in, right? If there are some significant injuries that, and you're hampered by the salary cap or the aprons, like you would have to trade, you might have to trade Nikola. I don't think that that's crazy. I think that that's what Milwaukee's doing.
Right.
We're Dame's out, like we sold our soul and bad luck. You got to lean into sucking though. There's no point in being the 8th seed or 9th seed. So you might as well lean in and try and reboot the franchise, So I think we all know that could be there, but it definitely is you riled up a hornet's nest a little bit when you talk about the best player on the planet at the height of his awesomeness and being like, yeah, we hired these two guys that it could be good. They get along and they have a good dynamic, but something bad happens. We might have to trade the greatest player in, maybe in Colorado sports history.
Right.
I think John Elway, like that'll, that him and Peyton will be my goats, but there's emotional attachment too.
Sure.
Over the last 5 years, there isn't anyone that's been better. And I don't even think it's like arguable than Nikola. Right. So, I don't know that I would say that John Elway was the best player on the planet 5 years in a row or 6 years in a row, just to be able to like add context to that, right? Larry Walker, all of these guys, Joe Sakic, there were times where there were other players that were better than them, even though they were great for a consistent amount of time. Nikola, in the year that he doesn't win the MVP, probably the 2 years he didn't win the MVP, or probably the 2 years that he statistically had the best seasons,
right?
So you're like, holy crap, like you're going to trade Superman. And, anyone trading a player of that magnitude, I don't think has ever really won the deal.
Right.
Could you say the Paul George trade for sure? Like, yeah, but Paul George is top like 20 player, not the best player. So
yeah.
It's got me on pins and needles, man. We talked about it last time, just about how different the continuity you can see in the same building, right, at Pepsi Center with the Avs, and you can see the vision, whether or not they execute it makes sense. There's alignment, they're all taking a swing at the same pitch. And then this last year is like, it's obvious that Calvin Booth doesn't agree with Michael Malone at all. Then you start to see a little bit more irritated Nikola Jokic, like, oh shoot, like there's that, which is why they made the moves they did. And then there isn't much flexibility. They kind of got to run it back unless Wallace really has some great connections to be able to move MPJ or Jamal and get an equitable return. Like there's no point in throwing in the towel and getting some junk contracts and some second round picks. Right. So you got to kind of make the environment better, have a little bit more effective system to create open shots or value the three a little bit more or whatever that might be. But we're kind of stuck with where we're at. And so you can see how unhealthy really was a detriment to this team who until the last few games of the NBA finals was the best team in the NBA's hardest challenge, which I still would argue, right? Like, right. So I don't know, man. I'm not a fan of it. I really would have liked them to buck their trend and go get a dude, because they have consistently just hired kind of the next in waiting.
Uh-huh.
To their credit, outside of Calvin Booth, and I'd really probably even say this last year, Calvin didn't do awful. They won the championship, and it wasn't the worst. Like obviously his ending isn't that great, but it's a little bit of like I think we have to understand some of those, some of what that is. But I don't know. You tell me what you think. When it came across your wire, when you saw, especially even after all of the stuff that we talked about,
right?
You feel like, or does it make sense to you about kind of what they're doing? And I did see a really good breakdown of, or request maybe to break down Wallace. So Wallace, I'll give a little bit of insight.
Yeah.
So he was with the Nuggets 3 years ago. So they spent the last 3 seasons with Minnesota as their director of player personnel and as their general manager for the G League affiliates, which is, I don't really even know how hard that job is, to be honest with you. I don't know how much of it's transferable. But he cut his teeth here, really in the scouting department. So I think the leverage for that is his front office experience is really roster and player related. He did play at Georgetown, second team All Big East in 2008.
All right.
Led them some back-to-back tournament teams, Big East tournament championship, Final Four appearance. So like he was a contributor on a really good team, played overseas a ton. So wasn't a guy that really, excelled. But I think to me, those are like the best ones, right? They understand maybe how you can get the most out of guys without elite talent, and sometimes when you're super elite and you're physically gifted, you don't know what it takes to get there. That's why Michael Jordan, in my opinion, will never be great at it, because he can do things that other people can't. I think it's hard for him to fathom how people don't. So Wallace is pretty well thought of. Tenzer, same thing, was served as the Golds, so the G League general manager. So I don't know. Because of the development style, it's like whoever the GM is for Albuquerque Isotopes, for the Rockies. Like, what do they do? Because you can't just go sign free agents. I don't think. I think that's like a major league thing, or can you? That's probably more. It'd probably be more to learn about. I think, and important as you have your G League affiliate, and the division of responsibilities. It can be a good thing. The worry I have before I send it back to you is just, was this made for the best possible impact, to have focal points, added energy into those areas, twice the horsepower, or was it we can get 2 for the price of 1? And instead of paying Bob Myers $7 million to do this job, we can hire 2 guys for a total of $2.5 million or whatever, and I can't say that that's not the cheaper option. That wasn't a big influence, which is kind of the part that makes me sad. It's like, I really want to believe that this was the best basketball decision.
Right.
And I think maybe it wasn't the worst basketball decision, but maybe not. Putting the team first.
Yeah.
So do you thumbs up, thumbs down, or whatever? What do we think?
I'll remain hopeful with this team. I think that they at least addressed the point that there has to be some addressing of depth on this roster. There has to be some movement to get Jokic some help, essentially, outside of the starters. And I think that that's just going to be such a huge thing. It's difficult. You just are forcing people into a position that's not ideal, and you're asking them to make something work with very limited resources. And so, I think it's just we're going to have to wait and see what kind of moves are made. I don't know that. I don't think, just from the feeling I'm getting around the team, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't move any of the big 3 or 4 contracts on this team, and just rolled back into next season with De'Ron Holmes and 1 or 2 guys that they acquire in free agency that maybe will fit up and down the depth chart. Maybe you see a smaller move made with Peyton Watson or Julian Strother. Maybe that gets you back into the draft on the second day. or gets you a draft asset.
Which that would be bonkers, man, right? Like Peyton Watson for a 23-year-old Peyton Watson, at best.
Right.
Like you're a team that is trying to win right now. And they're like, I've heard that rumor too, or like that speculation that their goal is to get back into the second round. And we have a bunch of that. You got Hunter Tyson. Unless it's like trading Hunter Tyson for that or PJ,
right.
Like guys like that. I got to run it back. I mean,
you have to if you're not going to move one of the major guys.
Yeah,
you're going to have to hope that these guys develop. That's just the bottom line, and I don't know that that's where we want to be as a team, but I don't know that we have another choice right now. I think you are. If you look at the trades that have been made, it is really expensive to go get a top tier guy. Even a Kevin Durant, who's older, just got traded to Houston. They gave up their young, high draft pick guy in Green, and Dylan Brooks, who is a veteran, defensive guy, and 5 draft picks. 1 first-round draft pick, but 5 or maybe 6 draft picks. I think 5 second-day draft picks. They don't have those sort of assets. They don't. So to be able to move someone who's not living up to a contract, you're going to have to pull what Boston did with Porzingis, which is trade him away to someone who can absorb the cap space and take nothing back in return. And then the trade is just here's your cap space. Do something with it. Maybe you can find someone to take a contract like that, maybe. But then you have to decide, is that the best use of your resources? Is it worth offloading MPJ just to have extra cap space? Especially if you're offloading your best shooter on the team right now. I think that there are things that they can do. I think there are pieces they can bring in to be competitive. I still think that they're just going to have to hope that some of these guys develop. And I think that's with these 2 younger VP guys coming in, with Adelman being a younger head coach, they're going to have to really focus in on developing these young guys and figuring out what moves they can make around the perimeter to bolster this roster. And it's a tough position to be in. I don't envy them. I think that they can make it work, but it's an uphill battle. It just is. And I think that Kroenke saying what he did about a potential situation where you'd have to trade Jokic, I think that's real. I don't think you say that unless someone asks you about it. I don't think that's something you just offer up. I don't think floating your superstar's name in, even if they're hypothetical trade scenarios, is probably not great for business. So not a fan that he just went ahead and offered that, but that doesn't mean that it's not a real potential scenario if you get into that second apron and someone goes down like you said with Milwaukee. If Dame goes down, you have literally no assets to recoup, and you're really limited on what you can do to rebuild. And so I don't know. It's wait and see. Everyone's saying trade MPJ. Everyone's saying, we need to move some of these big contracts. It's not as easy as just finding someone who will take MPJ. I think there's a lot more to it. And it's maybe by bringing in a guy like Wallace who has connections throughout the league, maybe he can broker something with someone he's familiar with, a colleague, someone who they have, a mutual respect with one another, something that they can do to, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. Potentially there's something like that could happen, but I am not holding my breath. I'm not holding my breath. It's a really tough position. And with all the all the trades that have been made over the last couple of days, Drew Holiday to Portland, you got Kristaps to Atlanta. Kyrie's about to sign a 3-year extension back in Dallas.
He won't win. And next year he's not playing. So it's like this 3-year deal for his services for 2 years. Yeah. I mean, but teams are moving and shaking, and I think that Denver had already decided that this team, in their estimate, was good enough to win it all. Whether or not that's an accurate assignment or assessment, I guess just remains to be seen, and we'll find out. I mean, it's just, yep. We'll see. I mean, because I think Deron Holmes being out this year really, even just for the development piece,
yeah,
I think really hurt, not just for last year, but for this upcoming season, because of what he could have gained experience-wise. How much better could we feel if he was a viable option?
Right.
Going in, you saw it, he showed well over the last month, whatever. Played good in the last playoff series, right? Then you feel like a Holmes, Strother, Watson bench, that maybe that's pretty strong, or it's added leverage to be able to move MPJ maybe for less on the dollar, because you have Deron Holmes, who you feel really good about playing at the 4 and moving AG back to the 3, right? Where now you have a much bigger, a bigger defensive focused lineup, and with that group, maybe you can win, a little bit more grimy. And so
right.
I expect Deron Holmes, Achilles is terrible, and I think he can come back a bit faster, especially being a young man. That I am not, for sure. That would take me forever.
Yeah.
But they already decided that they're going to run it back, and I think they can get a good player or two potentially, especially maybe if they're able to wrap up, a Strother with Saric. If someone's willing to take that, like you said, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I think that has to be why you bring someone in to be that kind of roster building GM with the relationships, is to be able to get the, I'll take this deal for you, and don't forget, you're right. When it's your turn, it's your turn.
Right.
Those happen all the time. You do deals with teams that you have relationships with, and it's like Calvin Booth being able to utilize Tim Conley's connections in Washington to get the KCP trade.
Well, it's just it's the reason you bring a guy like Wallace, and he's familiar. He's with a staff that
is the reason. With. Yeah, it's that reason. You have to leverage that, and we got to get that done. Yep, because if you don't, we saw what happened, right? Calvin Booth had 0, which is just crazy to me. How a guy played a 10-year NBA career, played at Kansas, all the stuff. How do you not have relationships? Either you're the biggest introvert ever, which doing this job probably not ideal, or you're a jerk, and people don't like you and don't want to deal with you. And at least Wallace introduction press conference sounds like a really thoughtful, likable guy, and I think that hopefully that goes a long way. But we'll see. I still think they have the 7th best odds, 6th best odds to win the championship next year. So maybe Kroenke isn't, maybe he's not totally crazy for thinking that this team can be a title contender. I think we're all just burned a little bit of we knew it. We told you, we knew it. Yeah. Why did you get Darius? Anyway, but
it's just to kind of put some finishing thoughts on that. I don't think the Nuggets are far away from being able to compete for a championship. I think that you have to have guys that can win you games besides Nikola Jokic during the regular season. And I think that's where the depth is such an important piece. Not only can they step in and play when Jokic needs a night off, but they can do so for good stretches of time. When we have a lead, a 20-point lead, and coming into the second half, we can throw them out there and be confident that they can close a game out for us. And so, when you have a bunch of young guys, that's not really their MO generally. Even with Oklahoma City, you see a bunch of young guys, and their ability to close wasn't. Obviously, they won a championship, so I'm not knocking them. But just as an example, throughout the playoffs, you come out, they lose game 1 in multiple series. They end up getting it together. But those guys have to grow on the job, and maybe you need to just go find some guys that are veterans that can fill in those roles, that can give you more competitiveness during the regular season, some more consistency during the regular season, as opposed to young guys who you're hoping develop into what those guys already are. I don't want to see them gut the young talent from this team, because then you're in a situation where you end up having to trade someone at some point anyways, because you are really asset bare, which even more so than they are now. But maybe you flip one of those guys for a little bit of a second day pick and a veteran, even if it doesn't have the same upside potential. Someone that can just give you something that the team needs, and they're going to bring it consistently. I think that the initial moves they make are going to be very telling as to what this looks like. I think the part that bugs me a little bit is that they're not in any trade rumors right now. There's no interest floating around the league. If you get on Google or Twitter and you type in Nuggets trade rumors, there's nothing. It's bare right now. And I just don't think that there's much interest in what they have or the contracts that they have right now, outside of maybe maybe a Jokic or Jamal Murray. And I don't know that they're looking to move either of those guys. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a wait and see at this point. I hope that 3 guys driving the ship as opposed to 2 guys driving the ship doesn't cause issues. I hope, the leadership is not uneven. I think when you have 2 guys in a role, if one excels and the other doesn't, it becomes just as toxic as it was before. That's a worry for me. But I do think that they're talented, youngish guys, young for front office roles for sure. And I will just wait and see. I'm hopeful that they can do the job.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is now. So now it's a little bit of like, give myself a day or 2 to bitch about it. And then,
yeah,
you know what? Go do your job, guys. Like, let's make this team better. I'm not going to not be a Nuggets fan tomorrow. So,
right.
It's a little bit of like, for Nuggets history, it's kind of nice. Like, we're not satisfied with, a team that was 1 game away from, the Western Conference Finals and, a legitimate title contender, really, right? Like they, in the Western Conference, are the only team that gave Oklahoma City the push.
Yeah.
And it took Siakam and Tyrese going, full flame throwing Fantastic Four Johnny out there, like just whole different sideshow to take them to a Game 7. So there's some at least connectivity to, if we have a healthier place, we have a guy that has better relationships to even just give us opportunities to make a move or 2 when they're there. And a guy that can focus on making sure if we do spend money that it makes sense, then this could work really well. It just, kind of depends on Josh has to be the guy that takes the, make sure that there's leadership, because you can't have 2 people leading equally who have the same amount of say, because there has to be a tiebreaker. Well, if there has to be a tiebreaker, that's the guy that has the power. And so Josh can't go get lost in Europe, watching soccer for a while or those kind of things. And so, not going to tell people how to spend their money and what to do with their toys. But I am, Josh. So do what I think you should do. But we're hoping for the best. You know what? I have a good feeling they're going to make a move here in the next month, and we'll talk about it.
For sure. Let's transition to some Broncos. I'm going to let you introduce what we're talking about for Broncos.
Yeah. So I think, was it CBS or NFL but they did a all quarter team century. So the first 25 years of the 2000s NFL team. A couple Broncos made it. DeMarcus Ware, Peyton Manning. But guys like Von Miller didn't make it, even in the 4 depth chart. I don't want to debate all of that stuff. One, because how many players that have played in the league last 25 years, that's a lot of stat reviewing.
Right.
And I don't want to, I didn't prepare, and I'm not gonna for that kind of level. But talking about since 2000, what would our Mile High Sports Symposium all Broncos quarter century team be? And I thought that would be fun. That maybe we could alternate position groups.
Sure.
Kind of give each other a little bit of feedback, but in the end, if it's our position group, we decide who the MHSS stamp is, and then we kind of build our super team.
Right. Yeah, let's do it. And right. I'll just let you tell me what I'm doing, and you just
go. Well, I will start for our quarterback room.
Okay.
So since the quarterback room is only one, we're just going to do kind of our starting group, like we're filling out a fantasy roster or something.
Right.
I don't think there's any argument that it would be anyone other than Peyton Manning. I mean, it was what we call one heck of a run during his time in Denver. All-time leading season in terms of passing yards, passing touchdowns, high-scoring offense in NFL history. Led them to 2 Super Bowls and a victory in a 4-year stretch. Just absolutely bananas. Most touchdowns thrown in a single game, besting his own record. And so, could be, maybe the best 3-year stretch of any quarterback to ever play football. And that's not including his Super Bowl winning season. So just an absolute dynamo when it comes to the production, to, the guy tripped and fell and landed on 12 wins. And so I'll start us off by our starting quarterback representing the last 25 years for the Denver Broncos is Peyton Manning. So I think it's more than fair, fantasy style. I'm going to give you opportunity to pick 2 running backs.
2
you think are the best 2 running backs of the last 25 years for the Denver Broncos.
Oh man, this is difficult. It's kind of a weird position group. Like, I think that there's been a lot of good guys. I don't know that there's been a great running back in the 2000s. At least not that I can think of off the top of my head. I probably would say, okay, do they just, what's the qualifier? Do they have to have played a certain amount of time? Is there anything like that?
No, you know what? I'll give us one just because it's fun. I would hate for us to overthink it. But I'd give you, so like, for example, Mike Anderson. Had 2 1,000-yard seasons in the 2000s. So in 2000 and 2005, which is super interesting. They're like 4 all right years or like in between, but was the leading rusher for the Broncos for 4 seasons. You did have the 2 seasons of just absolute madness from Clinton Portis.
Yeah, I was thinking Portis, but I didn't know if he was here long enough to count.
Yeah. I think we can make it do what we want it. Phil Lindsay, 2 years is kind of the starter, 2,000-yard seasons, another season with a handful of rushing touchdowns, and so you got your Melvin Gordon, king of the 900 rushing yards, and fumbles. But really, I think for the 2000s, for a team that kind of churned out running backs at a pretty high degree, really,
all right.
Terrell was in the late 90s.
All right.
You got Anderson, you got Clinton Portis, you got
I'd probably go.
Lindsay. I think those are really kind of the guys that I would. Or, no Sean Moreno. No Sean Moreno was a pretty solid player for a good stretch of time here in Denver.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll go. I think if we're looking at like building an all-time roster too, like I think Portis has to be one. I think he was the best running back career-wise of all of them. I think he had some great seasons here. Rushed for over 1,500 yards both the years that he was there. I think that's probably where I'd go first. And then probably it's close between Anderson and Lindsay. I would probably lean Lindsay, maybe just for recency bias. And this town loved him, and still does. but we really enjoyed seeing him come up through the ranks and be really effective. And I think that a combo of both of them would be pretty fun in the backfield. So I'll go with Portis and Lindsey.
All right. I would have went Mike.
I get that.
But that's why we get to have our own opinion. You do you and I do me. I'm going to give myself 3 receivers because NFL is a 3-receiver league. First and foremost, I think it's pretty easy to be able to say Demaryius Thomas, who shouts out to my guy, RIP for sure. But just an absolute dynamo. The guy, let's go over his stat line. So from 2012 to 2016, averaged over 1,300 yards a season. Let's see, like 50 touchdowns, and you didn't hear a peep from him, right? And so even when he fell off a little bit in 2017, 900 yards. Was injury plagued his first season, second season a little bit too. You get Peyton in here, and he from 2012 to 2018 before he gets traded, plays 15 to 16 games a season, blocks his butt off, was a guy that could take a screen pass, a bubble screen to the house, or could go over the top, could get you tough ones. DT's game was just absolutely phenomenal. I am going to go by next with Brandon Marshall.
Okay.
So I think, his 4-year stretch here, marred in some oddness, obviously, as he struggled with some mental health stuff, well documented on his own, but also immaturity, those things. That said, 102 catches, 104 catches, 101 catches over a 3-year span. I think still has the NFL record for most catches in a game. And why DT has it most catches in a Super Bowl, losing effort, but 2 guys that were just absolute monsters, right? So DT 6'3", 220, Brandon Marshall 6'5", 230. Just who would guard that pair? I feel bad for defensive backs. Just good luck. And then I think with that, we forget how long Rod Smith played and how well he played into the 2000s. And so 2000, he had 1,600 yards, 2001, 1,300 yards, 2002, 1,000 yards, 2003, 845, but then back up to 1,100 before, kind of finishing at 36 with 500. So as a guy that eclipsed almost, about 8,000 yards in 6 seasons after John Elway left. So it wasn't just a byproduct of John Elway, far from it, actually. And him being, Rod Smith, 6 foot, 200 pounds, he'd be the small guy in the group. Feel pretty good about that. You got honorable mentions from Decker, from Sutton, from Brandon Lloyd, who probably had the most nuclear season. That guy was just bananas. But didn't make the list because the list is too good. So I will. You know what? I'm going to throw a tight end in there because let's do that just to make it easier. So not just picking one guy. I'd go Julius Thomas. I think Julius Thomas was for 2 seasons was crazy. Shannon Sharp, I would give to more of the 90s run.
Yeah. I mean,
so really in 2000s, and 2 seasons, 2000, 2001, and Baltimore came back 2002 and 2003. Was still a really productive player, but his damage was absolutely in 90s. So with that, that's our receiver group. Now I'm going to kick it to you for the offensive line group, which I know you know by the back of your hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to start with Ryan Clady. I think he is, when healthy, was a pretty dominant offensive tackle. I don't think you can really argue that very, very much. He was a shutdown kind of guy. I loved his game. Where did he play? Boise? Is that right? Boise State?
Boise State. Yep.
Yeah, man. I wouldn't say a small program like some of them, but a smaller football program.
But when he was there, that was that's pretty really big breakout.
That's true. That was
the beginning of that turn. Yeah. So he definitely was a diamond in the rough-ish, even though he was a top like 12 selection. But for sure, not a shoe-in playing from that program. Not yet. They weren't who they were later. That's for sure.
I'll have to come back to guard, but I think, Tom Nalen, just kind of a nail center, someone that one of my favorite probably Broncos. I don't know about all time, but definitely in the top, 10, 15 of guys. Just demeanor, the way they interacted with the media and the way they acted in the locker room. It felt like he was a bit of the ringleader in there. And we had him in the media for a little bit here, and he was always great to listen to, gave good insight. I think he's a really smart guy, just a great offensive lineman for this team. Let's see, who else? Maybe Vasquez at guard. I think he's a good option. Great run blocker, kind of a lead by example guy. You could technically move him to right tackle. I think he played tackle for a little bit too. So, there's an option there. I don't know. I want to ask you this just because I'm curious. Anyone on this team now that you think could make the cut?
Yeah, I think Miners.
I was thinking Miners too.
For his last, he's all pro 2 seasons in a row. His height right now, especially in the 2000s, I think you had Ben Hamilton, you had Dan Neal, so you had some really, really good players. But I think none of them were at least as highly thought of at any point in time in their career as Quinn Miners is right now. So I think that he absolutely could be it. I think, if you're not doing left and right tackle, I think Garrett Bowles he's the second best probably tackle of the 2000s. If you think about it, with all pro selections, Matt Lepsis was a good right tackle, was never an all pro or a pro bowler, I don't think. To me, that probably would be guys that I would consider. Matt Lepsis was a really good player. So was Dan Neal. And so maybe I would those two, but again, both of those were kind of in the late 90s into 2000s. Garrett Bowles has been all the 2000s and has been, at least for the last 4 seasons, he's been not just a good player, but but a really good player.
Yeah, I think Lepsis is a good mention. I think the right tackle is maybe the hardest one, to be honest. It has been maybe Orlando Franklin, a guy like him was successful with this team, had a good run there. I don't know. Who am I missing? I feel like I'm missing someone at one of the guard spots, maybe.
I think Ben Hamilton and Dan Neal, to me, those are the only. Those are guys that had
Chris Cooper, maybe.
Chris was a really good player. I think once he hurt his ankle, I think that was unrealized in the sense of that. So let's see. Let's go to maybe some of the late 2008 teams.
I know. I was trying.
Yeah. Really, it kind of fades out. Matt Lepsis, Ben Hamilton, Tom Nalen, Dan Neal. To me, those were kind of
yeah.
Those are the guys of the 2000s that really cemented themselves as just kind of phenomenal players. All of them remaining with the Broncos for a pretty good, significant amount of time.
And we'll throw Miners in there too.
And to me, again, I think Quinn Miners still was as good as those other 2 guys were at guard. Quinn Miners is still the best.
Yeah.
At the height of his powers, he is the best of the guards. That's for sure, in my opinion, at least till now. Too. So, yep. And you got Clady and Chris Cooper, I think was good. I think because of that injury, he was only really good for. He was good for 4 years, and so to me, still, Quinn was still a better player in the same amount of time.
Yeah, for sure. All right, what's the next group?
All right, we'll go maybe edges, pass rushers.
Okay.
So obviously Von Miller was just
gotta be
just kids would say that dude. And then I'm gonna say almost Doomerville on the other side. I think Doom.
Love it.
I love DeMarcus, but DeMarcus really it was a 2-year run here. 2.5. Overall, obviously the best player, but I think prime Doomerville was just an absolute nightmare. His 18.5 sack season was it. Like that guy was that dude, and wishing we could have had some more of those. So yeah, that would be my edge group.
Yeah, I think that's safe.
What about D-line? Who would
Doomerville over where?
As a Bronco, I would.
Yeah.
Just because I think he also, it's like 6 seasons of it, where
right.
DeMarcus was really like 2.5. That 2016 season, he got hurt and was out quite a bit. Maybe I'm going to do a 3-man rotation then. I'm going to do a 3-man rotation, and DeMarcus is in my 3-man rotation.
Okay, I like that. It's hard to leave him out,
It is really hard, but you're right. Yeah. All right, D-line.
I think Trevor Price is probably the first guy that comes to mind for sure. Dominant. What he had, I'm looking right now. 40.5 of his 64 career sacks as a Bronco during the 2000s. One of my favorite Broncos from back in the day. Just a force of nature. One of those guys that you didn't want to have to block, especially on an island. Really loved his game. I'm trying to think too. Like, I wonder if anyone from this. Maybe it's too soon for this defensive line group, just because they're still most of them are fairly new to the team. Mm-hmm. But this defense is pretty legit, and so I was thinking about throwing a defensive lineman from last season in here. I don't know. Is it too soon for that, you think?
It's kind of like Derek Wolfe to me is like a guy.
Yeah.
That could. Malik had really one like really good season.
Right.
I really like Trevor Price was, before inside pass rushers were super cool. But no, I think the way that Zach Allen played, even the last two, even the 2 seasons was pretty phenomenal. I think Derek Wolfe was really good for this team for a long stretch. And I think some of that gets lost a bit in kind of the chronicles of the Broncos. But adding that part in, I think that, what Zach Allen did last year was
that's where I was leaning. Yeah, that's where I was leaning. Allen was pretty amazing last year. I think it's just a good group, so it's hard to say. I'll be interested to see if he can kind of keep those numbers moving forward. But I am that was where I was kind of leaning it if we were talking this year, or last season for that position. So
if you look at it, I think Wolfe was kind of the all-time Bronco, but
I think Wolfe is probably
he did a lot of the dirty work. Only had 34 sacks in his career, and so wasn't a guy that always there. But as Von Miller credited Derek with a ton of his success, and a lot of those sacks that Von had were in cahoots with. Yeah,
that's true.
So
I think that's fair. I think Wolfe and Price probably the actual should be the 2 as Broncos.
Yeah. But I'd say Trevor Price, Zach Allen and Derek Wolfe are a nice trifecta.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
Good. It's pretty good rotation there. I'll go inside linebackers, which has not been as illustrious over the course of the last couple of decades as it was throughout. But Al Wilson is the guy.
Got to be the guy.
They've been really trying to find that guy since then. And then, of the recent teams, recent seasons, I'm going to go with, actually, I don't know if I want to do that yet. Do I? How long? How long did? No, I think Mobley only played a handful of seasons. I would go. I'm going to go with Danny Trevathan. I think Danny Trevathan was just a maniac, and really provided this team with that again. I think the other argument I would make for would be DJ Williams. I think DJ Williams was underrated. I think more was expected of DJ because of going to Miami and his draft status. But was defensive player, AP rookie of the year. So came on and was a really stout player really until 2012 when he got hurt and then went to Chicago and kind of wrapped up his career there. But as a Bronco was a pretty consistent, not overly impactful in terms of creating turnovers, but definitely a guy that when he landed or when he got to the ball with some improved intentions.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Let's just go full secondary. Give me your
full secondary. Okay.
Give me 3 corners.
Three corners. Okay. Well, I think the first 2 are pretty simple. It's Champ Bailey and it's Pat Surtain.
Nice. Okay.
It's Champ Bailey.
Ooh, I want to know who the third is. This is gonna be
good. I know. I'm struggling with the third, but I mean it's Champ Bailey and Champ Bailey 2.0 with Pat Surtain. I think that those are safe for sure. I am tempted. To put Darren Williams in the conversation.
Ooh. Did not see that coming.
I was thinking about it. I'm tempted to. Yeah. Delp O'Neal was a good corner for us. I'm trying to remember all the guys over the years that we've had. Quite a few.
There's Chris Harris Jr. Yeah, Talib.
Yeah, I mean Chris Harris obviously is great. Talib's great. It's really difficult to make the decision at corner because there's so many good options. I probably would go Chris Harris Jr. though. If you're talking, I mean, you're a third CB, technically a slot CB. Then I'll go with Chris Harris Jr. and it's well deserved. He was a dog. A guy that no one really expected to win that position and hold it for as long as he did and be as dominant as he was in that no-fly zone. So I think that you got to go with them at third.
Yeah, I think as
much as I love Talib and the attitude that he brought, it's a difficult choice to make. There's a lot of good players. And then we'll go safeties. I think it's got to be. I think TJ Ward's got to be in there. He's no-fly zone, dominant safety, just knocking guys out. I think we all love his style of play. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anyone from the the early 2000s.
John Lynch was a
was
a Ring of Famer from his time
right?
in the early 2000s. Yeah.
Do you think John Lynch over Justin Simmons?
I do.
I kind of do.
I do just in the simple fact of his 4 years, Broncos thought highly enough of him enough that he was a Ring of Famer. He also, if I go and look, let me see. It's hard because it's Justin was pretty phenomenal. But John Lynch was a Pro Bowler his 4 seasons in Denver, his final 4 seasons. I think so. Just when it comes to accolades and recognition, I think he was that guy. If it comes to interceptions, Justin by far. but that's not how John played. John was I'm going to come smash your face in. And, and I think he was I think he was a key contributor to much better teams. Even on the downside of his career. So that would be me. But if we were to go a three safety look, Justin obviously is in there.
Yeah, I think so. It's hard because his years were all losing seasons. And so that does make a difference, right? When you're the best player on a bad defense, you're not going to get the same sort of accolades as a guy like John Lynch, who may not been the best player on that defense, but held it down for a really good defensive unit and had success with that team. So it's a tough one.
100%. It is. Kicker.
Oh yeah, you can do special teams. Okay, cool.
Why not? I'm gonna go with let's see. I'm gonna go Matt Prater. I think Matt Prater. Yeah, Jason Elam did again a ton of his work in the 90s. I think Prater was just an absolute weapon. And so I'm gonna do that. Punter. I'm not really gonna do that. I'll give it to Tom Maroon. It's pretty phenomenal. I don't know how long he kicked in the 2000s, but I'm gonna go ahead and give that to him. Returner. It would have been Darrent. Just for that, but I think the year that Trendon Holiday had, in 2013, is still just some of the craziest. Like he either fumbled or took it for 6. It was like one or the other. And that guy was that was the only time I can remember in Broncos history where you didn't go to the bathroom on the kickoff or punt. That guy was like, he could score at any point in time, and he did a ton. So give that to him. Long snapper, not going to do that because they've all been great. I don't think I've remembered one crappy long snapper.
Sure. I think they all.
Coach of the 2000s. Is there any way that it couldn't be Mike Shanahan?
I mean, even though
Gary won,
I would say Gary's your other option, but I don't think he usurps Shanahan. Unfortunately for him, honorable mention to John Fox, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, John Fox demoted you to. No, I don't even think he wasn't even the best D coordinator in that time. Even though I think again, John Fox was a good coach for what they needed.
Correct.
And then they made the right call. Moving on from then. Sometimes there are coaches that are able to get you to the mountain, but not over it. And I think that was that example. I think Mike was better in totality, but I think that Gary did the best coaching job of anyone I'd seen, right? So not only handling that Super Bowl season with the quarterbacks and all that stuff, but then even the next season, you got, a Pro Bowl alternate season for Trevor Siemian, but you turned 7th round nobody from Northwestern into a viable NFL starter. You kept the Sharks at bay when it comes to that defense and their personality and kind of what would happen with the offensive failures moving on in seasons. That you got 2 really good seasons out of this team when you had less than stellar quarterback play for a guy that is an offensive coach. I think he did the best job, but because it was a shortened period of time, I definitely would I'd say John or Mike did the best job over time. One with multiple quarterbacks, in a variety of ways, produced influence over today's football still, and should be a Hall of Famer.
Won multiple Super Bowls too. Yep. So, got to go with the guy with the more rings, I guess.
Got to go with the GOAT for the Broncos. Yep. But that's what I got. Nice job. Nice job for participating.
Yeah, you're testing my memory. I was like Google searching over here. Man, my retention's not always great. Rating more honorable mention for Baltimore. Yeah. Good old Raheem the Dream.
Yeah, we got Raheem.
All right. Well, we are at time today, so we appreciate y'all being here. Glad we were able to not have any technical difficulties this week. We'll consider that a win. Moving forward, we've got lots of probably Nuggets and Broncos most, but we're keeping our ear to the ground with the Avalanche. There's been some moves. They re-signed Brock Nelson. They've re-signed a few guys here and there. So keep it an ear and eye out on that. And I know that the rookie showcase is coming up pretty soon for NHL. So something to look forward to for the Avs fans, and Rockies we'll talk about when they deserve to get talked about. So we'll see if that's at all. You know, right now they're making a push. We thought about it today. We thought about it.
Yeah,
but
we did.
We're gonna let that
500 over the last 10. They're a competent team over the last 2 weeks. So there's that. Good job, guys.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week, same time. Be kind to one another. Be safe out there. And if you need a sports prescription, ask a doctor.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute. Work hard for the car, so that's why it's all tinted. Wait a minute. Had a real late night, woke up with my